Shalom, shalom. Let me know if you can hear me. First and foremost, I want to say call halal, Yahweh, Bashim Yahushua, Bashim Kodash. Send double honors to the apostles, the elders, bishops, Great Millstone. Send much peace, love, salutations to y'all. I'm out there pushing the word of y'all, Bashim Yahushua, sincerely and true. I'm the brother Ariala. And I'm going to do a quick World War III update. There's been a lot going on. And the reason why I named it the progression of prophecy, we talked about this a little bit, in the New Year's Eve of Destruction live streams, that, the Most High sets forward. That's why we call it an algorithm. He sets forward different events that's leading us into Armageddon and the coming of the kingdom. And so when we see these skirmishes, these wars, these rumors of wars, we know we're getting closer and closer to that day. We know we're getting closer and closer to the release of the MOTB, and then ultimately where these nations fire nuclear missiles on each other and destroy themselves in the third World War III. And there's a lot going on that's pretty significant. I'm going to play a video that describes it pretty well, and we'll touch on these scriptures. Whatever you brothers come up with, we'll read those scriptures as well. Lord willing, this is edifying. I'm going to start here in the book of Revelation 11 and 14. It says, the second woe is past, and behold, the third woe cometh quickly. So as we see the skirmishes escalate between Russia and the Ukraine, and the strain that it's putting on the EU, and the jockeying for positions over there in Europe and Central Europe, that's leading us to that third woe. As we see the military drills that are being done and conducted by China in and around Taiwan, flexing its muscle over there in that region, this is pushing us toward the third woe. The attacks that the United States are making on Venezuela to secure itself in the Western Hemisphere. All right. And it's a signal to Russia. It's a signal to China, to stay out of there, stay out of the Western Hemisphere. And you see China doing the same thing over in the East. Y'all stay out of here. All of these things are lead ups. And these same things were happening in World War I and World War II. It was just these different regional events that happened that led into what we understand as a world war. But this time, the weaponry is set to destroy everybody. The waster. Okay? And we're going to see that. We're going to see that destruction soon enough. Okay? I'm going to play this video. Oh, yeah. It's from something else.
Old named Gavrilo Princip fired 2 shots in Sarajevo. On June 28, 1914, a 19-year-old named Gavrilo Princip fired 2 shots in Sarajevo. Within 5 weeks, the entire continent of Europe was at war. But here's what most people don't understand about that moment. The war didn't start with those gunshots. It started years earlier. It started with treaties signed in private rooms, with railroads built to move armies, with colonies claimed on maps, with speeches about national destiny and industrial output charts showing one empire catching up to another. The assassination wasn't the beginning. It was the point where everything that had already been set in motion became impossible to stop. Now consider where we are today.
Everything that had been set in motion is impossible to stop. We're seeing these same type of events happening now. You see how Trump is moving, and it's like he's just the Most High's putting it in his mind to stir things up with the overt enemies of the United States, and to stir things up between supposed allies, which the scriptures say too. All right? Proverbs 21:1, it says, the king's heart is in the hand of the Lord. As the rivers of water, he turneth it whithersoever he will. Okay? So the Most High is working on the minds of the kings of the earth to produce prophecy.
Hey, right now, there are active military operations on 3 continents involving nuclear-armed powers. The global economy has been weaponized. Trade routes that kept the world connected for decades are being contested by warships. Alliances are forming that haven't existed since the Cold War. And in capitals around the world, generals are updating war plans that were considered unthinkable 10 years ago. This video is going to show you something most people haven't fully processed yet. World War III is not coming. It's not a future possibility we need to prevent. It's a process that has already started, and by the time you finish watching this, you'll understand exactly why. When people imagine a world war, they picture a single dramatic moment, a declaration of war, an invasion broadcast on live television, a flash of light over a city. But that's not how the first 2 world wars actually began. World War I didn't start as a world war. It started as a regional dispute between Austria-Hungary and Serbia. It became continental because of treaties. It became global because of colonies and shipping lanes and economic dependencies that...
And now the world is even more entrenched in these type of, contracts and confederacies and where, okay, these people are bound to each other economically. But these people are bound to each other politically. This nation over here supplies this nation with weapons. So it's even more entrenched in these different connections that'll make it even bigger.
Pulled in nations from Japan to Brazil. World War II started even more gradually. Japan invaded Manchuria in 1931. Italy invaded Ethiopia in 1935. Germany remilitarized the Rhineland in 1936. Spain erupted into civil war that same year, with German and Soviet forces fighting on opposite sides. By the time Germany invaded Poland in 1939, armed conflict had already been spreading across the globe for nearly a decade. The formal declarations came late. The process started early. Now look at the present. Since 2014, there has been armed conflict in Ukraine involving Russian forces. Since 2015, a war in Yemen with Saudi Arabia and Iran backing opposite sides. Since 2011, Syria has been a battleground for Russian, American, Turkish, Iranian, and Israeli military operations. In 2020, a war between Armenia and Azerbaijan drew in Turkish drones and Russian peacekeepers. In 2023, conflict erupted in Gaza, pulling in Iranian proxies across Lebanon, Yemen, Iraq, and Syria.
You see how these things are just a progression of the prophecies? And it's continual, like it talks about in the book of Psalms 140. They're continually gathered together for war. And it's just it's a progression leading up to what we understand. And this is why it's going to be a thief in the night to a lot of people. A lot of people, they hear the rumors of war and they're like, oh man, they've been saying that. Oh man, they've been saying that. No. World War I and World War II were very similar in the way they just progressed over the course of years and years. And then finally, an event or something went down to break it and pop it all open. Matthew 24:6 says, and ye shall hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that ye be not troubled, for all these things must come to pass. But the end is not yet. For nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom, and there shall be famines and pestilences and earthquakes in diverse places. All these are the beginning of sorrows. Okay, so we're watching this progression happen all around the world, man. For us, it's a signal, it's a token. All right, it talks about these same type of tokens in 2nd Ezra, the 9th chapter. If somebody want to put that into the scripture, but yeah, I mean into the chat. But we see this happening. All right, but things are speeding up now. We're getting to the back end of these things. Okay, it's getting more robust. All right, it's getting deadlier. And we see it. Okay.
These are not isolated events. They are connected by the same set of tensions, the same collapsing agreements, the same competition between the same major powers. What we are witnessing is not a series of separate regional conflicts. It is the early phase of a larger systemic war that has not yet been named. After 1991, the world operated under a set of assumptions. The Cold War was over. The Soviet Union had dissolved. The United States was the only remaining superpower, and a new international order emerged based on a simple premise. American military dominance would guarantee global stability, and in exchange, nations would follow a set of rules. Rules about trade, about borders, about how disputes would be settled. For about 2 decades, this system mostly held. But systems don't last forever, and this one began breaking down long before anyone wanted to admit it. The 2003 invasion of Iraq was conducted without United Nations authorization. The 2008 financial crisis revealed the fragility of the Western economic model. The 2011 intervention in Libya was framed as humanitarian, but resulted in regime change and a collapsed state. The 2014 annexation of Crimea showed that territorial conquest was possible again in Europe. Each of these events chipped away at the foundation of the post-Cold War order, and each time the response was inadequate. Sanctions were imposed, statements were issued, but the underlying violations were absorbed. The system adapted rather than enforced. What this created was a new reality. The rules technically still exist. Nations still reference them in speeches and legal arguments, but in practice, the rules no longer constrain the most powerful actors. What matters now is capability. What matters is leverage. What matters is what you can take and what you can defend. The international order has not been replaced by something new. It has simply stopped functioning. And into that vacuum, competition has returned. For most of human history, there was no single dominant power on Earth. Different empires controlled different regions. Wars were fought constantly to adjust borders and spheres of influence.
And you see this with the United States constantly flexing and jockeying for positions. People are tired of the United States, coming around, reorganizing militaries, reorganizing governments, collapsing economies. So, especially over the last 10 years, you've seen Russia, China, these BRICS nations shore themselves up against the strength of the United States. Okay? Creating more proxies, doing what they need to do. All right? Habakkuk 2:16, it says, Thou art filled with shameful glory, drink thou also, and let thy foreskin be uncovered. For the cup of the Lord's right hand is turned unto thee, and shameful spewing shall be on thy glory. And that's how these nations are looking at Babylon the Great. Like, man, we're tired of you, man. All right. And it like I said, the buildup is getting more and more apparent. It's not just words anymore. When militaries are being moved around. China's making moves in the silver market that are shaking up the markets. They're talking down on the tariffs that the United States is putting on their goods. So all of these things are popping off. Let me see. Some. Brother Jimmy has feed the flock. The water, he put second Ezra 9, 1-4. And he answered me and said, Measure thou the time diligently in itself, and when thou seest the part of the signs past which I have told thee before, then thou shalt understand that it is the very same time wherein the highest will begin to visit the world which he made. Therefore, when there shall be seen earthquakes and uproars of the people in the world, see, this is what we're having right now. Then shalt thou well understand that the Most High spake of these things from the days that were before thee, even from the beginning. So we see these signs and we understand, okay, this is the process. We're getting there. Brother then put 2 Ezra 15:20, Behold, saith the Most High, I will call together all the kings of the earth to reverence me, which are from the rising of the sun, from the south and from the east and Lebanon, and turn themselves one against another, and repay the things that they have done unto them. That's why, it says in the book of Joel, let the weak become strong. All right? And they are, and we see them turning against themselves perpetually.
The period from 1945 to 1991 was unusual. Two superpowers divided the world between them. Their competition was intense, but it was also structured. Each side understood where the other's red lines were. The period from 1991 to roughly 2008 was even more unusual. A single power dominated the entire global system. American military spending exceeded that of the next 10 nations combined. American financial institutions set the rules for global trade. American cultural products reached every corner of the planet. That period is now over. China.
And when you understand it too, I'm just listening to. He said from 1991 to 2008, and that's like the like when the large bit of the foundation of our leaders, the apostles and everything, was being established and put together too. And then in 2008, things broke out with all the camps popping up, man. And since that time, prophecy has been moving lightning quick. People think 20, 30 years is a long time. That is not a long time, not in the eyes of an immortal. It's very, very fast, okay?
China's economy has grown from 10% of American GDP in 1990 to roughly 75% today. Russia has rebuilt its military and demonstrated willingness to use it. Regional powers, Turkey, Iran, Saudi Arabia, India, are pursuing independent foreign policies rather than aligning with Washington. The world has shifted from one pole to many poles. And historically, this kind of transition is one of the most dangerous moments in international politics, when existing institutions were designed for one balance of power, but reality has shifted to another. There is no mechanism to peacefully manage the transition. The institutions become obstacles rather than solutions. The rising power sees them as tools of the declining power. The declining power sees any reform as surrender. This mismatch between the world as institutions describe it and the world as it actually exists is the structural cause of the instability we are living through. Every great power has a zone it considers essential to its security, a region where it will not tolerate hostile forces, a sphere where it insists on influence. For the United States, this has historically meant the Western Hemisphere. The Monroe Doctrine of 1823 declared that European interference in the Americas would be treated as an act of aggression. For nearly 2 centuries, this principle has guided American foreign policy. For Russia, the equivalent zone is the former Soviet space.
So now that's where you see the Tin Horns hating that whore, okay? Because the United States basically has advanced itself dramatically over all those years, and kind of left Europe in the dust of World War II, broken and battered. All right, but now, like I mentioned earlier, you see even Russia and all these other places, they built themselves back up, man, and they ready to claim their position. So Esau is gonna fight against Esau. They've always done that, and it's never gonna stop.
The countries that were once part of the USSR, or the Warsaw Pact. When NATO expanded eastward after the Cold War, absorbing Poland, the Baltic states, and others, it moved directly into the zone Russia considers non-negotiable. For China, the essential zone is the waters off its coast, Taiwan, the South China Sea, the island chains that control access to the Pacific. When these zones overlap with the interest of rival powers, conflict becomes almost inevitable. Ukraine sits in Russia's claimed sphere, but it also sits on the border of NATO's expansion. The war there is not simply about Ukrainian territory, it is about where the boundary between Russian and Western influence will be drawn. Taiwan is claimed by China as its own territory, but it is also protected by American security guarantees and produces over 90% of the world's most advanced semiconductors. A conflict there would be about far more than the island itself. The Middle East sits at the intersection of 3 continents. Whoever controls it influences trade between Europe and Asia, access to oil, and the balance of power across the entire Eastern Hemisphere. These regions are not incidental to great power competition. They are the locations where competition becomes confrontation. The nuclear age created a paradox. Great powers now have the capability to destroy each other completely. But precisely because of this capability, they cannot fight each other directly. A conventional war between nuclear-armed states carries the risk of escalation that no leader is willing to accept, so they fight differently. They fight through proxies, through allies, through partners and militias, and local forces armed with their weapons and guided by their advisors. In Ukraine, American and European military
See how this progression has armed the whole world? You know? Now you have these smaller nations that are equipped with the first world weaponry. This is all the progression of prophecy, man. You know, and I like the way this person is consolidating the information. Everything's been set up. Okay. Psalm 75:6, for promotion cometh neither from the east, nor from the west, nor from the south, but the Most High is the judge. He putteth down one and set up another. Okay. He's the Most High is just playing chess with the people. For in the hand of the Lord there is a cup, and the wine is red, it is full of mixture, and he poureth out of the same, but the dregs thereof, all the wicked of the earth shall wring them out and drink them. So these the seed of the wicked, these Edomites, they're gonna get the dregs. They're gonna get the worst of the judgment of the Heavenly Father, man. And he put the weapon in their own hand. You know? He put the weapon in their own hands for them to destroy themselves. Fantastic.
Equipment is operated by Ukrainian soldiers against Russian forces. The Western powers are not formally at war with Russia, but their weapons are killing Russian soldiers, and Russian missiles are destroying equipment supplied by NATO. These measures are presented as alternatives to war, but they are not neutral actions. They are acts of economic warfare designed to damage rival states without firing a shot, and increasingly, they provoke military responses. When the United States uses the dollar's dominance as a weapon, it gives every other country a reason to find alternatives. When shipping lanes are used to enforce sanctions, it gives targeted nations a reason to develop the capability to contest those lanes. The weaponization of trade and finance does not prevent military conflict. It sets the stage for it. It demonstrates hostile intent. It damages economies in ways that populations feel directly.
And it talks about this in the book of Ezekiel, the 28th chapter, with the king of Tyre, right? And how they dominated merchandise. They had more wisdom than everybody, but then what happened? Then the nations came up against them. We're seeing the same thing happen here. Okay? It's all a progression. It's all connected. The politics, the economics. Okay?
Forces rivals to either accept subordination or prepare for a different kind of confrontation. Beneath the surface of political disputes lies a harder reality. The modern world runs on materials that are not evenly distributed: oil and natural gas, lithium and cobalt, rare earth minerals, semiconductors, fertilizer, grain. The nations that control these resources have leverage. The nations that depend on them are vulnerable. Europe discovered this in 2022 when Russian gas stopped flowing. Energy prices spiked, industries shut down, governments scrambled to find alternatives. China has worked for decades to secure access to resources in Africa, South America, and Central Asia. Its Belt and Road Initiative is not primarily about infrastructure. It is about supply chains, about ports and pipelines, and mining concessions that ensure Chinese factories can keep running regardless of what the United States does. The United States has responded by trying to reshore critical industries and secure its own supply chains. The CHIPS Act, the Inflation Reduction Act, massive subsidies for domestic production of semiconductors and batteries and critical minerals. This is not cooperation. This is competition. And when competition involves resources that entire economies depend on, it does not stay economic for long. Maritime choke points become strategic flashpoints. The Strait of Hormuz, the Strait of Malacca, the Suez Canal, the Panama Canal. Any disruption to these passages affects global trade within hours, and every major power is now investing in the ability to disrupt them, or to keep them open by force. There is a reason most of human history's largest conflicts have been fought in Eurasia. The combined landmass of Europe and Asia
and that's why we did all the lessons on the King's Highway and the battles and trying to control trade lanes, trying to control trade routes and routes, because that's a kingdom. A kingdom is built mostly around, what's coming in and what's coming out. You're the CEO of the nation, you know, and the accounts and the books have to be right, right? How goods and services are flowing in and out around the world, lets you know if you're the ruler. If you control that, you're the ruler. Okay. So these, like he said, these critical choke points that are all around the world, everybody's been jockeying and positioning themselves to have the advantage. Well, it's just going to lead to everyone actually destroying themselves. Okay. This is Second Ezra chapter 15, and we'll skip down. The brother had mentioned it earlier. We're going to go down to the 29th verse. It says, where the nations of the dragons of Arabia shall come out with many chariots, and the multitude of them shall be carried as the wind upon the earth, that all they which hear them may fear and tremble. Also the Carmenians, Iranians, raging in wrath, shall go forth as the wild boars of the wood, and with great power shall they come and join battle with them, and shall waste a portion of the land of the Assyrians. And then shall the dragons have the upper hand, remembering their nature, and they shall turn themselves, conspiring together in great power to persecute them. Okay? So we're going to see all these different nations and factions come up against each other. Why? Jockeying for positions for trade, wanting to secure their future, and everything like that, man. All right. Now, skipping down to 46, it says, and thou, Asia, that are partaker of the hope of Babylon, and art the glory of her person, woe be unto thee, thou wretch, because thou hast made thyself like unto her, and hast decked thy daughters in whoredom, and that they might please and glory in thy lovers, which have always desired to commit whoredom with thee. Thou hast followed her that is hated in all her works and inventions. Therefore, saith the Most High, I will send plagues upon thee, widowhood, poverty, famine, sword, and pestilence, to waste the houses with destruction and death. When you even read this, in the Old Testament, Moab is always linked with Esau, bro. They've always been trade partners. And so what you think is going to happen to the Chinese economy, which is already shaky, when things begin to collapse, they're going to go down too. They're all going to be having to trend towards the MOTB system. And when this thing goes down, it talks about in the book of Revelation, the 18th chapter, how all the nations are going well when they see the smoke of the burning of Babylon the Great. Because the whole thing is connected. The world economy is going to be trashed. Okay? And we're just watching the dominoes fall, piece by piece.
Contains the majority of the world's population, the majority of its resources, the majority of its industrial capacity. Whoever controls Eurasia, or prevents any single power from controlling it, shapes the future of the planet. American strategy since 1945 has been built on preventing any single power from dominating Eurasia. This was the purpose of NATO, the purpose of alliances with Japan and South Korea, the purpose of military bases stretching from Germany to Okinawa. But something has changed. China and Russia, after decades of mutual suspicion, have moved closer together. Their partnership is not an alliance in the traditional sense, but it represents a level of cooperation that directly challenges American strategy. If Eurasian powers integrate economically, militarily, technologically, the United States faces a fundamentally different world, one where its geographic isolation becomes a disadvantage, where its network of alliances is insufficient to maintain dominance, where the center of global power shifts permanently eastward. This is not a hypothetical scenario. It is the trajectory we are on, and preventing it has become the central organizing principle of American foreign policy, even if this is rarely stated openly. The Middle East has never been a stable region, but it has always been a consequential one. When oil was discovered in the Persian Gulf, the region became essential to the global economy. When Israel was established, it became a flashpoint between Western and Arab interests. when the Iranian Revolution happened, it introduced a third pole of competition. Today, the Middle East is more volatile than at any point in decades. The conflict in Gaza has expanded into Lebanon. Houthi forces in Yemen are attacking commercial shipping in the Red Sea. Iran and Israel are engaged in direct military strikes against each other's territory. American forces in Iraq and Syria are under regular attack. None of these actors can afford to back down without losing credibility. All of them have patrons or allies who are invested in the outcome. If the Strait of Hormuz is closed, even temporarily, oil prices will spike globally. If a war breaks out between Israel and Iran, it will not stay between Israel and Iran.
Right.
The Middle East functions as a fuse. Conflicts there do not remain local. They spread through energy markets, through alliance commitments, through refugee flows, through terrorist networks. What happens in this region affects the price of gasoline in Ohio and the stability of governments in Europe. And right now that fuse is burning. Every war in history has exceeded its original scope. World War I was supposed to be over by Christmas. The generals had plans, the politicians had timelines. The war lasted 4 years and killed 20 million people.
It shows you it's all in the hands of the Most High, man. These men, they think that they put it into the computer. And they use their monthly prognosticators to try to think that they're going to figure things out. It's all up to the Heavenly Father, man. They were looking at, oh, this war is going to be over real soon. No, bro. Yeah, it's going to go the way the Most High wanted, man.
The invasion of Iraq was supposed
That's how we know that these nukes are going to get used. Because they'll tell you, oh, man, that's impossible. Mutually assured destruction. They would never do that. The Most High is in control of the minds of these kings.
Take weeks. Mission accomplished was declared in May 2003. American forces remained for 8 more years, then returned again in 2014. Afghanistan was invaded to destroy Al-Qaeda. 20 years later, the Taliban controlled the country again. Leaders always believe they can keep conflicts limited. They believe in precise strikes and manageable escalation, and off-ramps that can be taken when objectives are achieved. But wars have their own momentum. Each escalation is justified as a response to the enemy's provocation. Each new weapons system is defensive. Each expansion of the conflict is temporary. Each step makes sense in isolation, and each step makes the next step harder to avoid. Right now, American weapons are striking targets inside Russia. Russian missiles are destroying American-supplied equipment. Chinese ships are shadowing American carriers in the Pacific. Iranian proxies are attacking American forces in the Middle East. Each side believes it is acting carefully. Each side believes it understands where the red lines are. Each side has systems and doctrines and protocols designed to prevent miscalculation. But the space for miscalculation is growing, and the mechanisms designed to prevent catastrophe are the same mechanisms that failed before every war people thought could be avoided. When historians study the origins of...
Boom. So, with that being said, we understand that it don't matter what they calculate, It don't matter what they say. It's all up to what Yahweh Shem Yahushua wants. All right? And we're going to see that. We're going to see that. This is Sirach chapter 10, verse 7. It says, pride is hateful before the Most High and man, and by both doth one commit iniquity. Because of unrighteous dealings, injuries, and riches got by deceit, the kingdom is translated from one people to another. All right? And so the Most High is already setting off the process of this kingdom, this empire, this world as we understand it, this Western modern Christian Edomite world to be taken down, and for the righteous, the elect of the nation of Israel to be built up. We're going through that process. We're seeing that process happen. The progression of prophecy. Piece by piece by piece, we're going to see how these skirmishes here and there and there and here, lead to what? World War III. So I'm only gonna play I just played the first 15 minutes. The rest of it is good. If you Akian want to go or watch it, it's on the page. Mapping assassinations. It says World War III has already begun. You just don't know it. All right, you just don't know it. You know, and I'm gonna check this out here. Nuclear apocalypse says 2026 nuclear war scenario you're not ready for. Wonder what this is talking about. You know.
9 countries possess nuclear weapons. Over 2,000 of those weapons are on alert and ready to launch at any time. Each one has the potential to deal catastrophic damage wherever it lands, with an active ongoing war in.
Okay, so I'll watch that later. It's acting like I don't want to play. But anyway, man. That's right. That's right. That's right. Let's see. I didn't see what he put. He put Proverbs 17:4. The beginning of strife is as when one letteth out water. Therefore, leave off contention before it be meddled with. Yep. They can't stop the wise. You can't, man. You know. And I see, you know, the least shall draw them out. God, man, these things are just inevitable. We're just watching them, reporting it through the spirit power. Y'all about to know shot. You know what I'm saying? So, but you know, that's all I had, man. I'm gonna go check out this video, see what it's talking about, see if it'll play for me. But with that being said, I'm gonna say, call hello, Yahweh, Bashim, Yahweh Shai, Bashim, Kadash. Double honors once again to the apostles, elders, bishops, the great millstone. Much peace, love, salutations to y'all. I'm out there pushing the word of Yahweh, Bashim, Shai. Sincerity and true shalom.